For many years, scientists and filmmakers alike have band together to ask the age-old question, how do you make the perfect movie? Is it groundbreaking and inventive cinematography, exceptional performances, perfect pacing, or does it simply just take a father to walk in on you watching a movie, fold his arms while standing about for about 30 minutes, then eventually locking in right near the end of the movie? Many would say yes. Today we have a film that is pretty much the antithesis of a dad movie, and it goes by the name of Crime 101, which is such a shame. I gotta say that is not a promising title, but I beg, bear with me here. Crime 101 is a crime thriller starring Chris Hemsworth, Mark Ruffalo, Halle Berry, and Barry Keoghan. The film follows an elusive thief eyeing his final score that encounters a disillusioned insurance broker at her own crossroads. As their paths intertwine, a restless detective trails them, hoping to thwart the multi-million-dollar heist that they are planning. I mainly wanted to check this movie out due to the pretty stacked cast, along with a very well-edited trailer, which seemed to promote an interesting addition to the crime thriller genre. It's been in the back of my mind before the day of release, and now that I've seen it, I want to talk about it. And I'll start by doing so by talking about the performances, leading with Chris Hemsworth. Hemsworth is known for roles in films like Thor and Furiosa. I thought Hemsworth did a good job here. For a good majority of the runtime, he has to play up this stoic role, which he is able to convey really well. Along with that, his character is very socially inept, and he can convey this well too. He manages to be really awkward interacting with people, while at the same time having moments of still being charming occasionally when he needs to be. There were occasions where I thought his character leaned into being a little one note. However, once more about him is revealed, I think the reasoning for this is achieved well. Mark Ruffalo plays the detective in this movie. He's known for roles in movies like Zodiac and Spotlight. Funnily enough, a role like this isn't too far from other roles that Ruffalo has played in the past. Not like he's constantly typecast in this type of role very often, but it's a role he can achieve pretty well. I enjoyed his performance here, as he also does well at maintaining the balance of a jaded man at the end of his rope with his job, while also having to hang on to that last shred of charisma that he has. He has different levels of chemistry with other actors on screen, all of which are a gem to see happen. For me, he was an example of someone who stole the scenes he was in whenever he was on screen. Something I especially loved about his performance was the way he was able to convey such an array of emotions in quick succession with one another, only through his eyes. It'll feel as if he's trying to say so many sentences from using his expressions alone. I feel like in a lot of modern movies, this style of acting tends to be not utilized as often, so it's always great to see. Halle Berry is in this movie too. She's known for roles in movies like X-Men and John Wick 3. Berry gave such a strong performance here. She did well at balancing her feelings throughout her career as we see it unfold throughout the runtime. There's times where she has to keep up appearances, and she does well at trying her best to mask her real feelings. Then when she flips her internal rage on people in rare moments where it's shown, it leaves a cathartic feeling as you're watching it, feeling sympathetic for the way other people in the movie treat her. Through the way she goes about carrying herself, it leaves you conflicted on how to feel about certain decisions she makes in the movie, which makes for an interesting character and performance. Barry Keoghan is here too. Keoghan is known for having roles in movies like The Banshees of Inisherin and Saltburn. I thought there were many occasions in this where Barry's performance featured a lot of overacting. When it came to being in the heist scenes, while he tried to be as aggressive as he could, I never found Barry to be incredibly intimidating, and unfortunately this wasn't intended for the character. Clearly, the more he does it. I feel like it could have been done well if he was trying to be intimidating, but no one in the movie actually took him seriously, making him seem more pathetic and even, to an extent, realistic. Similarly to how Ryan Gosling's character is portrayed in the movie In the Place Beyond the Pines.
Get over here now! Get the fuck over here!
He's less freakish here, as he's mainly played a lot of weirdo roles in the past, and I think it's sometimes endearing that his character thinks he's cooler than he really is from start to finish. He's a little shit, which he can portray really well, so I do have to give him some credit for that. Also, his accent was really distracting from time to time. I couldn't tell if in the movie he was trying to be somewhat Irish, or if he was trying to be an American and he just can't really do a great American accent. Nick Nolte is in this movie too. He's known for having roles in movies like 48 Hours and Cape Fear. here. Nolte has very limited screen time. He's mainly placed near the beginning of this movie, but for the time he is on screen, he knows how to chew up the scenery whenever he's there. Any lore about his character is shrouded in mystery, but he manages to do a good job at making himself seem threatening when he's on screen with other characters in the movie. Moving on from the performances, I want to talk about the actual story of the movie. One of the first things I noticed before the film even started was seeing that this movie was 140 minutes long, which for those who don't know is 2 hours and 20 minutes. For me, runtime personally isn't always an issue for me, as long as the filmmakers has made a story that they truly feel is warranted that long of a runtime of whatever they give it. And thankfully here, I think it is warranted, as there's a lot of build up and character development in at least the first hour of the movie, which works here. Something I should mention that I noticed pretty early on is the idea that this movie has many homages to other crime movies of the past, even going as far as to name drop the Thomas Crown affair. But another major influence on this film that I and many other people have noticed is
She got a great ass. And you got your head all the way up it.
if you're a film fan in any capacity, you obviously know Heat. I don't need to give it any introduction. It's incredibly influential. Even I myself have shamefully done a homage to the film in one of my own short films. But there are many points where there are very obvious visual clues to Heat. So much so that I thought the movie was going to be more of a cat and mouse type of film, which it didn't fully end up being, but that wasn't a big deal. The first hour of this thing is a bunch of build-up, telling each character's story until they eventually start crossing paths. This isn't done in a weapons way or a non-linear way in vein of something like Pulp Fiction, but it almost acts as a way of chance at first, which simply shifts to fate almost, which was written very well into the screenplay. No person's individual story stuck out to me more than the other. I suppose the most complexly written character is Chris Hemsworth, as he's a thief with a set of rules. Whenever he conducts heists, this is never fully explained, and I appreciate that it doesn't rely on spoon feeding the audience the guy's motives. Many of the heist and action scenes are done well, as there is this constant rising tension throughout them to an extent where you never fully know where things are going to go. Albeit, I do think there's a bizarre writing choice near the end, which makes me think if what I thought was going to happen would have just been more predictable, but to an extent, it was also interesting to see when it happens. Obviously, I don't want to fully explain this, as I don't want to dive too deep into spoilers, so I'll just continue vague posting. Next, I want to talk about the cinematography, which is done by Eric Winslow, who's done cinematography for movies like Paddington and The Double, a movie starring Jesse Eisenberg, which is incredible, by the way. I highly recommend it. Circling back to this movie, however, I thought this was shot pretty well. The color grading and lighting especially made this thing feel like a real movie, and what I mean by that is that usually a lot of people nowadays complain about movies having really flat lighting and not really being inventive with its color grading, but this film has a great attention to that, which of course can be credited to the people in those respected fields. As for the actual cinematography, there's a good use of different camera angles and techniques. There's quite a few shots of doors which have the camera mounted onto the car door, and when the car door is closed, the camera moves in sync with it, which seems to be all the rage recently, especially since One Battle After Another has came out. Another angle that kept showing up here were good uses of Dutch angles, which added to some of the more intense moments during the thrilling sequences. This isn't something I commonly talk about on this channel, but I do gotta talk about the editing of this movie, as there's a lot of really good moments done here. One thing that is done quite a few times here is a character will be doing something, let's say something as simple as getting dressed, and you'll watch, let's say, Chris Hemsworth getting dressed, and it'll cut to the next shot at first and you'll think it's the same character getting dressed, but instead it'll be, for example, Mark Ruffalo's character. This is a very simple editing trick, in fairness, but it gave me some dopamine in my head whenever it would happen, because it was done quite a few times and it was always very seamless. The last point I want to talk about for this movie is the music, which was composed by Benjamin John Power, who's done music for movies like She Rides Shotgun and Calm with Horses. I enjoyed a lot of the music here. There were thankfully only rare moments when the music had the generic aura of action movie music, which sometimes sounds like stock music. However, there is thankfully a great deal of effort put into the sound and style of the music here. It was mainly very synth heavy for a good majority of the runtime, and whenever it came to more tense moments of the movie, the music ramped up to give off that adrenaline adrenaline pumping vibe too. It suited all of the other scenes that it was used in. Overall, I like this movie. Like I said in the intro, it's such a dad movie, which is funny since to an extent you could consider Heat to be the godfather of dad movies, which this movie is heavily inspired by. I'm not the only person who thinks this too. A lot of people are using this comparison to describe the movie, which I do feel a little bad about, since this movie does stand on its own heavily, as it can be super engaging and entertaining from start to finish. It's pretty digestible, which isn't meant to be a complaint in this film's case in the slightest. I feel like some of the audiences will check this movie out, which will cause them to seek out many of its predecessors, since this movie actively names drops titles like Bullet and The Thomas Crown Affair, so maybe some people will check them out, although I doubt it, since when I went to see this film in the theater, it was pretty much filled with a bunch of boomers, so they've most likely already seen those movies. I'm giving Crime 101 4 stars. This film is home to many good performances. No one is at their absolute acting peak, but everyone also does great in the roles for sure. A story which remains compelling and entertaining for all of its 140-minute runtime, as it decides to utilize pretty much every single minute of that runtime. It's really well shot, as I was never bored looking at the screen. I do think more thrillers like this should get made. Sometimes it can be annoying to have to watch constant gunfights done by actors pretending to be ex-army or Navy SEALs, which you could argue lends itself into being some type of military propaganda. I think crime films like this are always better when they choose to be about morally complex people on both sides of the spectrum, at least for me. Anyways, if this review has given you any interest in checking this out, the movie is currently running in theaters still, and especially for the way this thing looks, I would highly recommend checking this out on the big screen at your local cinema as soon as you can.